So, can you see the paper title?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a journal article that's a summary of the fire following aspects of a Southern San Andreas 19.7 earthquake. And it was work sponsored by the United States Geological Survey. It was led by Lucy Jones. It was actually published, the work's actually about 10 years old now. It's still largely valid. And the thing I want to show you here is a couple of figures. So this is the earthquake we're talking about. Those are the ground motions. And you can see compared to the San Fernando earthquake, the amount of red here is huge. And not only does it extend up and down the San Andreas Fault, which is rather distant from urbanized Los Angeles, but because of the basin effects in the LA basin, the shaking intensities in the LA basin are actually quite high, almost the same intensity as along the fault, which means it's going to be a lot of fires. And that's a close-up of that. And this is the Northridge. I already showed this to you, the Northridge event. And this is what we expect. So put it in perspective. That's 111 ignitions in 1994, which LA Fire and the other fire departments in Los Angeles covered. There's about 1,000 fire engines in the greater Los Angeles area. And there's going to be about, I forget the exact number, I can tell you in a minute. That's and again, I can send you this paper. You see the number of fires we're talking about. And it is just rather overwhelming. As a matter of fact, let me just, back to the, sorry, just let me, let's see, how do I, okay. 1,600. There's going to be, for the, we average about 1,600 ignitions. And so there's about 1,600 ignitions we expect. And by the way, this work was done, again, on the U.S. Geological Survey funding, and I worked closely with Chief Borden and other chiefs in Los Angeles City, Los Angeles County, and CAL FIRE and OES on this, and they reviewed all of this work. So 1,600 ignitions is a best estimate. It could be more, it could be less, and the spread depends upon the fires and so on and so forth. Let's see, I want to, this is just an aerial photograph of Los Angeles, and the amount that we expect to burn, which is about 200 million square feet, is, if it was all in one nice, neat rectangle, that's what it would look like. So you can see that 200 million square feet, which is worth, let me just, let's see, that's 2 times 10 to the 8th times $400 a square foot, 4 times 10 to the second, so that's 8. That's $80 billion in today's money. $80 billion in fire following earthquake losses, fully insured. You can see that while it seems huge, it's actually a relatively small part, and very plausible that that amount would occur, the amount of loss would occur due to fires after an earthquake.
$80 billion? Wow.
Yeah, $80 billion, yes. Yeah, rather large loss. The actual abstract here, let me just, the executive summary. Again, this work was done in, I delivered the report 2008, so it's 12 years old. We expect 1,600 ignitions. 1,200 of these, first responding engine will not be able to adequately contain. We expect about 200 million square feet of residential and commercial building area will be lost, which is equivalent to 133,000 single-family dwellings. And the economic loss, I didn't put the number in the abstract here. Oh, $100 billion. 100 billion dollars. It depends on how much what value you assign per square foot to structures and their contents. So, but that's the order. And this was given to OES and City of Los Angeles in 2008. And actually, Lucy Jones, as you know, she was so the earthquake czar for Los Angeles for a year or two under Mayor Garcetti. She used this as the basis for one of the main parts of the platform of Resilient LA, designing for resilience. There, if you're familiar with that.
Now, this is all based on, predicated on an earthquake happening on a nice calm day in November, if I remember right.
Yes.
Not even dealing with if this type of earthquake happens at a time, when we have Santa Ana winds, or whether we have,
Yeah, it says here, 10 a.m. on 13th of November 2008, Los Angeles, and accompanied by breezy, low humidity conditions. But let me just find Santa Ana here, because you're absolutely right. We don't. Okay, the zone was specified as, they gave me the date, and I said what weather, and they said make it average November weather conditions, which is breezy, low humidity, no Santa Ana wind, realistic but not worst case. Okay, and that was what I was asked to do, and I assumed 10 miles an hour and relatively low humidity. And I want to talk about final burnt area. Okay, so right here, the real concern. Let's see. Well, you can read it yourself. The real concern is portions of Orange County, especially central Los Angeles basin, where a large plain of relatively uniform, dense, low-rise buildings provides a fuel bed such that dozens to hundreds of large fires are likely to merge into dozens of conflagrations, destroying tens of city blocks, and several of these merging into one or several super conflagrations, destroying hundreds of city blocks. Two special concerns exist. If Santa Ana winds exist, which is not assumed here, losses can be much larger. And if extremely calm conditions exist, which is also not the assumed scenario, the potential exists for a symmetric wind pattern to develop, caused by air drawn inward by uprising air from superconflagrations, what's called a stack effect. And then you get a self-sustaining feedback scenario, which can develop, which is commonly termed a firestorm, which can be very destructive. While relatively unlikely, the potential should not be ignored. Concern A is simply a larger mass conflagration fed by higher winds. Concern B is potentially much worse, both are potentially catastrophic.
When you look at this report, you wonder why anybody would want to live in Southern California.
Well, I live 400 meters from the Hayward Fault. I love the Bay Area.
It's pretty amazing, that we've gotten to this point, and we look at what we expect to happen, and we do expect at some point to have this kind of earthquake, yet the precautions that we've taken are maybe good, but not anywhere near good enough. Maybe there isn't the political will, maybe whatever. What are the things that you see that we need to do to minimize what's going to happen that we know is going to happen?
Okay, so if you follow the sequence of events, the earthquake happens, the ignitions break out, you want to report those ignitions, but you can't. You want to have fire engines come, but you don't have enough fire engines. When they get there, you want to have water, but you don't have enough water. So what can we do to solve that problem? So there's three things in that sequence. Well, there's actually more. I mean, you can try and prevent the ignitions to begin with. And actually, a lot of commercial and industrial entities in California have taken steps in that regard. I mean, the industrial analogy to anchoring your water heater. They've done a lot of that kind of work, but not all of them by far. So we're going to have a lot of fires in homes and in industrial and commercial properties. But you can, so first thing to do would be to improve the ability to prevent the ignitions. And the way to do that, you make sure that your water heaters and all your other kinds of sources are anchored. so that the shaking doesn't damage them and lead to loss of gas or other things that will cause a fire. And gas is a big issue. And what you want to do is actually, we need to have a mandated gas shutoff valve system on every gas customer in urbanized parts of California. So let me explain that. We don't need a gas shutoff valve on every service line for every customer in California. We do not need that. If you are living in a sparsely populated area, the odds of a fire breaking out due to earthquake are small, even if you get an earthquake. So I wouldn't worry about that. But the fire following earthquake problem is exactly like measles or COVID. It's an epidemic. You get a few people who get the measles or COVID or have fires break out. And if you're not immunized, those fires spread. So what you need to do is immunize the houses. And the way to do that is to put a gas shutoff valve on every gas service line. Now, currently, gas shutoff valves are little devices that a plumber has to come out and cut your gas line and install it. It costs, with his labor and everything, probably $1,000. We don't need that. What we need to do is what Japan did, and actually what the Southern Cal Edison and PG&E have done, which is change the gas meter. In Japan, following the 1994 Northridge earthquake, because of the fires that broke out, Japan switched out every gas meter in Japan. This is 125 million people. They changed every gas meter. They pulled the old one out, put a new gas meter in, and the new gas meter has built in a seismic switch. The event of an earthquake, it shuts the gas off. And in my service area, in PG&E came through a few years ago and replaced every meter in their service area with what they called a smart meter. And that smart meter was there to eliminate the need for a meter reader. Now, through the computer, through the internet, they read my meter and send me my bill. And at the time, internally, they considered putting in a seismic switch, and they decided not to do it. But it was cost effective to change the meters out to save money with meter readers. But it's not cost effective to do it for seismic shutoff. It's not cost effective for them because it's not their houses that are burning down. So, and actually Southern Cal Edison is I think a responsible company, but they didn't do it either. So that's one thing. Just change out all the meters. And it's not like this is a superhuman impossible job. They did it. It's cost effective. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you need to be able to improve the reporting of the fires. Now, I don't mean that we put an app on our mobile phones that allows us to report fires to the fire department. Actually, we could do that. We should have that. We should have an emergency app on our phones that allows us to report automobile accidents, crime, fires, and other things just by pushing one button. It's crazy that we don't have that app. But what we really need is for the fire departments to improve their situational awareness with drones and unmanned aerial vehicles. And actually, they are doing that. When I first proposed this 5 and 10 years ago, everybody thought I was nuts, and there was a lot of civil liberties issues that would never be solved. But they've been solved. And a lot of fire departments now have drones, and they can put them up. But I think we still improve the situational awareness of the emergency responders even better. So that's the second issue. Third issue is more fire engines. And that's the toughest nut because, quite frankly, adding a fire engine with a 24/7 crew is expensive. It's not so much the cost of the engine, although you need an engine and a firehouse and all that. It's the staffing. It's expensive. And under ordinary conditions, our fire service are doing a great job. So we're getting by with them under ordinary conditions. And we can't add hundreds of fire engines and hundreds of firefighters just to stand around waiting for an earthquake. So how we solve that, I'm not sure. One of the solutions, which Chief Borden pioneered in Los Angeles, is the Citizens Emergency Response Teams, training the CERTs. And that's a great solution. Right now, they're not really most of them are not really well trained in firefighting. And for good reason. Firefighting is dangerous, and the fire can quickly get away from you. So you're better off getting people out of the path of the fire and trying to get to the fire department as soon as possible. But we ought to, if anything can be done with the CERTs, that ought to be constantly under examination. And I believe it is, actually. I think they're trying to do as well as they can. But so the issue of resources in general, fire engines, CERTs, and so on, is something that we continue to work on. I don't have a good answer there. However, one answer is foam. Foam is a force multiplier. Engines carry a small amount of foam. What happens when you fight a fire? Water on it. The water hits the fire and bounces off. And only the efficiency of water in terms of heat absorption and energy and oxygen deprivation is actually very inefficient. Only about 10 or 15% of the water's capacity is utilized. The rest of it runs off down the drain. Foam allows the water to stick to the fire. And we ought to have a lot more foam capacity in fire departments. The problem with that is foam concentrate that they carry on the engines or keep in the fire stations has a shelf life, and it's not cheap. So again, we're going to stockpile hundreds of gallons of foam waiting for an earthquake. It's a problem. But they do use foam. We can work around it. In the 2008 San Bruno gas explosion, San Francisco Fire responded to that with the fire rigs from San Francisco Airport, which had massive amounts of foam, and they knocked the fire down right away with that. So those kinds of foam rigs, some kind of extra foam capacity, is one way to multiply our firefighting resources. Lastly is water. We need to improve the seismic resilience of our underground buried water distribution network. We need to have resilient water networks, not only for fighting fires, but after the earthquake, for the ordinary drinking water we need every day. If they're all broken and we don't have drinking water, how are you going to get the water to millions of people in Los Angeles? Now, again, this was recognized in 1971 Sylmar earthquake. Professor Duke and others started a process of doing this. And LADWP and Metropolitan Water and Metropolitan Water of Orange County and so on have all been working on this. The problem is not so much the aqueducts. The problem is the last mile, the distribution networks. And again, I've been helping LADWP to reinforce their system, to develop a resilient network. They're doing good work, but it takes time. So we ought to encourage that financially, the development of resilient water networks, and financially. And I mean, after all, if you're having your house renovated, if you hire one guy and space it out over 10 years, or you hire 10 guys and get it done in a couple months, which is more cost effective? Get it done in a couple months with 10 workers. We want to encourage them to do it faster, and they need the resources to do that, the money. But A, it's going to take a while to get it done. B, they'll never do a perfect job because, we can't afford perfect. So we need a statewide, standardized, portable water supply system, which I laid out in the Berkeley report of 2012, and which Chief Collins and OES director Mark Ioladucci are fully aware of and are now doing their best to implement. So those are some of the things that can be done. In LA, I also just proposed a high pressure system, and I've laid that out in that Berkeley 2012 report. It would have pump stations around Malibu and down in the harbor, and would run the pipelines up the flood channels, the LA River Channel and others, and have hydrants along those at selected locations, not down in the river channel, of course, but up on the street. That would be a real. It's not that big a deal. I talked to Army Corps of Engineers who control the LA River Channel riverbed, and they said, yeah, that we can live with that. That's not an issue. We can work with that. So that's another potential solution. LA City Fire Department and LA County Fire Department are two of the largest fire departments in the country. They're great fire departments. They're well practiced every year with the wildland fires, brush fires, and so on. They are very good, but their ability to move water long distances, relaying the water, I think they need to work on that.
One of the things you mentioned is exactly what happened in Sylmar, in the fact that when the collapse happened, there at the Veterans Hospital, nobody could get out as far as get the word out because their communication system was so bad. A couple of days ago, we spoke to the son of the administrator, who died a year after that, actually. And his dad did all the right things he had to do, and then sent him as fast as he could to drive down the road to find he goes, there'll be police officers out there somewhere. Grab one, tell them what's going on, and communicate, because all they have was walkie-talkies, and because the system had failed right away. And the other thing was the first report. Chief Ward was telling me the first report is actually one of the helicopters was up. Nobody knew for I don't know how long it was until the helicopter flew over and noticed that the hospital had collapsed, and that was the first report of that. So it was just amazing. I mean, two of the things that you're talking about here were two of the things that happened. Okay, you got it. Perfect.
That's the Loma Prieta. That's the Marina fire. That's me at the Marina fire in 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Nobody knew about this until the blimp that was there for the World Series managed to broadcast the TV, which they saw at the dispatch center. Wow. They couldn't get through on the radio. Regard to the insurance, the thing is, penetration of earthquake insurance in the LA basin is probably 40%, but everybody is insured for fire. So actually, the fire is a bigger insurance problem than the earthquake insurance. And because of that, Lloyd's of London is very concerned about fire following an earthquake. I've been over there and I've trained their underwriters in this regard. The kinds of things we've been talking about here, I've gone over with them in detail and given them tools to estimate. So the insurance industry is looking over our shoulder as what is going on. And they are very current with what's going on in LA and San Francisco and other cities with regard to fire following earthquake, partially because I consult with them. Among other things.
Is it possible to leave California as far as insurance goes, individual carriers, or no?
Of course, legally it's possible, but financially, I mean, California is a big market, so they always want to be here. But what they do is, of course, they limit their exposure in any one area. I mean, that's normal underwriting. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. So at a certain point, they will stop underwriting. An individual company will stop underwriting in Orange County or in Marin County, wherever it may be, because they've got too much exposure there. And they'll switch. And other companies, however, will come in. So I don't think there's any insurance crisis or anything. Of course, in 1906, the reason the high-pressure system got built after the fire was because the insurance industry told the supervisors they would never write an insurance policy again unless they built the high-pressure system.